When her husband locked her in a freezing dog shed, 8 months pregnant, starving, forgotten, Eliza Rowan whispered promises to the child still inside her. She didn't know that 9 years ago, she'd saved the life of the most dangerous man in Wyoming. She didn't know he'd been searching for her ever since. And she didn't know that the debt he owed would shatter everything her husband had built. This is the story of a woman who survived by becoming invisible, and the night she learned that sometimes salvation comes with a price tag written in blood. If you stay until the end, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far Eliza's story reaches. The dog shed hadn't been used for dogs in years. Eliza knew this because when Marcus first shoved her inside, back when she was only 6 months along and still stupid enough to argue, she'd found a collar buried in the frozen dirt. Leather, cracked from age and weather, with a name tag that read Lucky in faded letters. She'd wondered about Lucky. Wondered if the dog had been loved or if it had died out here alone, same as she was going to. Tonight, the cold had teeth. She sat with her back against the plywood wall, knees drawn up as much as her swollen belly would allow, arms wrapped around herself in a useless attempt at warmth. Her breath came out in white clouds that disappeared into the darkness. The shed was maybe 6 by 8 feet, no insulation, gaps in the boards wide enough to let the Wyoming wind slice through. Marcus had taken her coat before he locked the door. Taken her shoes too, though that almost didn't matter. Her feet had gone numb an hour ago. The baby kicked. "I know," Eliza whispered. "I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry." She'd been apologizing to her daughter for months now. Sorry for the father she'd have. Sorry for the grandmother who'd never meet her. Sorry for being born to a mother who didn't know how to be anything except a mistake. The contractions had started around sunset. Not real labor. Braxton Hicks, she thought, though she'd never seen a doctor to confirm. Marcus said doctors were expensive and she wasn't worth the money. Besides, women had been having babies without help for thousands of years. She'd figure it out. Each false contraction felt like a fist squeezing her insides. She breathed through them, counting seconds, trying to remember what her grandmother had told her about childbirth before the cancer took her. Something about breathing. Something about not pushing too early. Her grandmother had been dead 5 years now. 5 years since Eliza had anyone who looked at her like she mattered. She pressed her palm against her belly, feeling the shape of what might be a foot or an elbow. "Your grandma would have loved you," she said quietly. "She would have made you those little knitted hats, the yellow ones with the ducks on them. She was good at that kind of thing." The wind screamed through the gaps in the boards. Eliza pulled her thin sweater tighter, but it was like trying to hold water in a sieve. The cold was everywhere. In her bones. In her lungs. In the deep ache behind her eyes. She'd stopped crying 3 hours ago when the tears started to freeze on her cheeks. Marcus was probably inside the house right now, sitting in his recliner, watching whatever show he'd been obsessed with this week. He'd have the heat cranked up to 75 because he ran hot. There'd be a 6-pack on the floor beside him, 3 already empty, even though it wasn't even 9 o'clock yet. He'd be in his sweatpants, the gray ones with the bleach stain on the left leg, and he'd be scratching his belly while some laugh track played in the background. He wouldn't think about her at all. Eliza had learned that the first year they were married, that she could disappear right in front of him and he wouldn't notice. She could be bleeding, could be begging, could be breaking apart completely, and Marcus would look right through her like she was something he'd already thrown away. The only time he saw her was when he was angry. She shifted position, trying to find some angle that didn't hurt, and the movement sent a fresh wave of cold through her body. Her teeth started chattering. She clenched her jaw, but it didn't help. The cold was winning. "We're going to be okay," she told her daughter. "When you're born, things will be different. I'll be different. I won't let him hurt you. I swear to God I won't let him touch you." Even as she said it, she knew how pathetic it sounded. What was she going to do? She had no money, no car, no family, no friends. The nearest town was Riverwood, population 3,200, and everyone there knew Marcus, knew his family. The Rowans had been in Wyoming for 4 generations. They owned the feed store, had cousins in the sheriff's department, had their name on a plaque at the Methodist church. Eliza was from Nebraska. She'd shown up 6 years ago with a dying grandmother and $60 to her name. In Riverwood, that made her nobody. Another contraction hit, harder this time. She gasped, pressing both hands against her belly, riding it out. 30 seconds. 40. When it finally released, she slumped back against the wall, panting. Too early. It was too early. She wasn't due for another 4 weeks. "Not yet," she whispered. "Please, baby, not yet." But babies didn't listen to prayers. Eliza knew that better than most. She'd been 19 when she saved the stranger's life. Seemed like a different person now, that girl who'd pulled a bleeding man from a wrecked car during the worst thunderstorm Nebraska had seen in 30 years. She'd been driving back from the hospital, one of her grandmother's bad nights, when she'd seen the black SUV wrapped around a telephone pole. No other cars on the road. No houses nearby. Just rain coming down so hard she could barely see 3 feet in front of her. She should have kept driving. That's what smart people did. But Eliza had never been particularly smart. The driver was unconscious, bleeding from a gash above his eye. The passenger was worse. Glass embedded in his face and neck, blood everywhere. She'd pulled them both out, her grandmother's wool coat getting soaked and ruined, her hand shaking so badly she could barely dial 911. The passenger had looked at her while they waited for the ambulance. Even half-conscious and broken, his eyes had been sharp, pale gray, like frozen river water. "What's your name?" he'd asked, his voice barely audible over the rain. "Eliza. Eliza Hayes." "I'm going to remember that." She'd thought he was delirious. People said all kinds of things when they were hurt, but something about the way he looked at her, like he was memorizing her face, cataloging every detail, had made her shiver. The ambulance had taken them away. She'd given her information to the EMTs, then driven home with her grandmother, who'd slept through the whole thing. She never heard from either man again. By the time she thought to check the news, the story had already disappeared. Just another accident. Just another night. 3 months later, her grandmother died. 2 months after that, Eliza met Marcus at the diner where she'd started waitressing. He'd seemed nice at first. Steady. He had a job, a house, family in town. He told her she was pretty. Told her she looked lost, and he could help her find her way. She'd been so desperate to belong somewhere that she'd mistaken attention for love. They were married within 6 months. She realized her mistake within 6 weeks. But by then, it was too late. She'd quit the diner because Marcus said wives shouldn't work. She'd sold her grandmother's old car because Marcus said they didn't need 2 vehicles. She'd lost touch with the handful of people she'd known in Nebraska because Marcus said family was all that mattered, and she was family now. And then the yelling started. Then the pushing. Then the days locked in the bedroom. Then the dog shed. Then the baby. Eliza pulled her knees closer, trying to conserve heat. Her whole body was shaking now. She couldn't feel her fingers anymore. Couldn't feel her toes. The numbness was creeping up her limbs like frost on a window. She wondered if this was how she'd die. If they'd find her in the morning, frozen solid, the baby trapped inside her. If Marcus would even bother to call anyone, or if he'd just bury them both in the back field and tell people she'd run off. The thought should have scared her. Instead, she just felt tired. She'd been tired for so long. Her eyes drifted closed. Just for a second. Just to rest. That's when she heard the cars. At first she thought she was hallucinating. The cold did that. She'd read somewhere. Made you see things. Hear things. But the sound got louder. Engines. Multiple vehicles. Coming up the long driveway that led to the house. Eliza's eyes snapped open. Marcus didn't have friends who visited. Didn't have family who dropped by unannounced. And it was almost 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night in February. Nobody just showed up. She pressed her ear to the wall, listening. The engines cut off. Car doors opened and closed. Voices, low and controlled. Too many voices. Then footsteps. Heavy boots on frozen ground coming around the side of the house. Coming toward the shed. Eliza's heart kicked against her ribs. She scrambled backward until she hit the far wall, terror flooding her system with enough adrenaline to temporarily override the cold. Was it the police? Had someone finally called about the screaming? But no. The police in Riverwood knew Marcus, knew his family. They'd come out twice in 4 years, and both times they'd left after talking to him alone. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. "Eliza Hayes?" The voice was male, calm, with an accent she couldn't place. "My name is Victor Hale. I'm going to open this door. I need you to stay calm." She didn't respond. Couldn't. Her voice had frozen somewhere in her throat. There was a pause, then, "I'm the man you pulled from the car 9 years ago, the passenger. Do you remember?" 9 years. pale gray eyes, blood on his face. I'm going to remember that. The lock broke with a snap of metal. The door swung open, and light flooded in, flashlight beams, harsh and blinding after so long in darkness. Eliza threw up a hand to shield her eyes, her body instinctively curling around her belly. Jesus Christ! Victor's voice, went sharp. Get the medics. Now! Shadows moved across the light. Footsteps. More of them, running. Someone draped something warm and heavy over her shoulders. A coat. An actual coat lined with fleece and smelling like expensive cologne. Victor crouched in the doorway, and even through her blurred vision, Eliza could see him clearly. He was older than he'd been in the car, probably late 30s now, with dark hair cut short and those same gray eyes. He wore a black suit despite the cold, not a wrinkle in sight, and when he moved it was with the kind of precision that suggested violence was always an option. You're safe, he said. I'm going to get you out of here. No. The word came out broken. Marcus Rowan is currently on his knees in his living room with 3 of my associates making sure he stays there. Victor's expression didn't change, but something cold flashed through his eyes. He's not going to touch you again. 2 men in tactical gear appeared behind Victor. Between them, they carried a stretcher with a real goddamn medical kit strapped to it. One of them knelt beside Eliza, already pulling out a thermal blanket. Ma'am, I'm going to check your vitals, he said. How far along are you? 8 months. Her teeth were chattering so hard she could barely speak. Maybe 8.5. I don't know. The medic wrapped the thermal blanket around her, then reached for her wrist to check her pulse. His face went carefully neutral, which told Eliza everything she needed to know about how bad she looked. We need to move her now, he said to Victor. She's hypothermic. Fetal heart rate is irregular. If we don't get her to a hospital in the next 30 minutes, we're looking at 2 fatalities. Victor stood. Load her up. I'll handle the husband. Wait. Eliza tried to sit up, but the medic gently pushed her back down. Wait, I don't understand. Why are you here? How did you find me? Victor looked at her, and for a moment something almost human crossed his face. I've been looking for you for 9 years. You saved my life. That comes with a debt. He turned toward the house, then paused. And you should know, I always pay my debts. They lifted her onto the stretcher. The movement sent fresh pain shooting through her abdomen, and she gasped, grabbing the medic's arm. Contraction? He asked. She nodded, unable to speak. We're going to get you help, he promised. Just hold on. As they carried her across the frozen yard toward a convoy of black SUVs, Eliza caught a glimpse of the house. Through the lit window, she could see Marcus on his knees, just like Victor had said, hands behind his head, 3 men standing over him with the kind of stillness that suggested any wrong move would be his last. Her husband's face was purple with rage and fear. For the first time in 5 years, he looked small. They loaded her into the back of an SUV that had been converted into a mobile medical unit. The medic, his name tag said Torres, immediately hooked her up to monitors while a second medic started an IV. The beeping of machines filled the space. Eliza stared at the ceiling, her mind struggling to process what was happening. Victor Hale. She barely remembered him, a stranger she'd helped in a storm. And now he was here, 9 years later, tearing apart her life to repay a debt she hadn't even known existed. The SUV door opened and Victor climbed in, sitting on the bench across from her. He'd changed. There was blood on his knuckles that hadn't been there before, and his jaw was tight. What did you do? Eliza whispered. Nothing he didn't deserve. Victor's eyes met hers. Your husband is going to be questioned by the sheriff's department. They'll find evidence of domestic violence, tax evasion, and several outstanding warrants I made sure were filed this afternoon. He won't make bail. And even if he did, he'd have to go through me to get to you. I don't understand. What are you? A slight smile touched Victor's mouth, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'm a businessman, and you're under my protection now. The SUV started moving, picking up speed as they headed toward the highway. Through the window, Eliza watched her prison fade into darkness. The house, the shed, the life she'd been dying in. Torres checked her vitals again, frowning. Blood pressure's stabilizing, but she's still in early labor. We need to get her to County General. How far? Victor asked. 40 minutes if we push it. Push it. The convoy accelerated. Eliza closed her eyes, feeling the warmth from the heaters slowly seeping into her frozen body. The contractions were coming more regularly now, every 15 minutes or so. Not close enough to panic, but close enough to know this was happening. Ready or not, her daughter was coming. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the engine noise. "Why search for me? I didn't expect anything. I helped someone. That's all." Victor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer. "You were 19 years old, driving a car held together with duct tape and prayer. You stopped in the middle of a thunderstorm to save two people you'd never met. You ruined your coat. Probably missed whatever you were supposed to be doing, and you asked for nothing in return." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "Do you know how rare that is? In my world, nobody does anything without calculating the return. Nobody helps without expecting payment. But you did." "I didn't think about it," Eliza said. "I just saw someone who needed help." "Exactly." Victor's gray eyes held hers. "That's why I looked for you. Not because of what you did, because of who you are." Another contraction hit. Eliza gritted her teeth, riding it out, and when it passed, she found Victor watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I'm not that person anymore," she said quietly. I'm broken. I don't even know how to be a person outside of that house, outside of him." "You're still breathing," Victor said. "That means you're still fighting, and I'm going to make sure you have the space to remember who you were before Marcus Rowan tried to erase you." The highway lights strobed through the windows, casting shifting patterns across the medical equipment. Eliza felt the IV fluids warming her from the inside out, felt her daughter moving inside her, felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years starting to unfurl in her chest. Hope hurt worse than cold ever could. "What happens now?" she whispered. "Now we get you and your baby somewhere safe. Then we make sure Marcus Rowan never comes near you again." Victor's expression hardened. "And then, when you're ready, you decide what kind of life you want to build." County General appeared in the distance, a sprawling complex of buildings lit up against the night sky. The SUV pulled up to the emergency entrance, and suddenly there were people everywhere. Nurses, doctors, orderlies with a wheelchair. Torres and his partner transferred her carefully, making sure all the monitors stayed connected. Victor walked beside the wheelchair as they rushed her inside. "Private room," he told the intake nurse. "Whatever she needs. Send the bills to this number." He pressed a business card into the woman's hand. The nurse glanced at the card, and her eyes went wide. "Yes, Mr. Hale, right away." They swept Eliza into an elevator, up 3 floors, down a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and floor wax. The private room was nicer than anywhere Eliza had lived in the past 5 years. Cream walls, a window overlooking the parking lot, equipment that looked like it had been installed yesterday. A doctor appeared, young and efficient, already snapping on gloves. "I'm Dr. Chen. Let's see what we're working with here." The examination was quick and professional. Dr. Chen's face revealed nothing, but Eliza could read the tension in her shoulders. "You're 4 centimeters dilated," Dr. Chen said. "Your body temperature is still recovering from severe hypothermia, and both you and the baby are showing signs of malnutrition and stress. I want to run a full panel of tests, get an ultrasound, and keep you on fluids and monitors. If everything stabilizes, we'll let labor progress naturally. If not, we may need to consider intervention." "Is she going to be okay?" Eliza asked. "The baby?" "I'm going to do everything I can to make sure both of you are okay," Dr. Chen said firmly. She turned to Victor. "I need you to step outside while we get her settled." Victor nodded. Before he left, he looked at Eliza. "I'll be right outside. If you need anything at all, tell the nurses." Then he was gone, and it was just Eliza and the medical staff, hands moving with practiced efficiency, voices calm and reassuring. They got her into a hospital gown, wrapped her in warm blankets, adjusted the monitors until the beeping formed a steady rhythm. Another contraction came, stronger this time. Eliza breathed through it while a nurse held her hand and told her she was doing great. She was so strong. Just keep breathing. When it passed, Eliza lay back against the pillows, exhausted. Through the window, she could see the lights of Riverwood in the distance. Somewhere out there, Marcus was being questioned. Somewhere out there, her life was being dismantled and rebuilt without her permission. And somewhere inside her, A baby girl was fighting to be born into a world that had already tried to kill her mother. Dr. Chen came back with the ultrasound machine. "Let's take a look at your daughter." The screen flickered to life, and there she was. A tiny form curled in on herself, heart beating visible as a rapid flutter. Dr. Chen moved the wand across Eliza's belly, checking measurements, making small notes. "She's small," the doctor said after a moment, "but her heart is strong. Everything looks viable. You did good, Eliza. You kept her safe." Eliza stared at the screen, at this tiny human who'd lived inside her for 8 months, who'd felt every moment of fear and pain, who'd somehow held on anyway. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "We made it. We're safe now." The words felt like a lie and a promise at the same time. Dr. Chen turned off the ultrasound. "I'm going to let you rest for a bit. Labor could take hours or it could go fast. Every birth is different, but I'll be monitoring you closely." When the doctor left, Eliza was alone with the machines and the warm blankets and the impossible reality of what had just happened. 9 years. Victor Hale had been searching for her for 9 years. She thought about that girl who'd stopped in the storm, thought about how simple it had seemed at the time. See someone hurt, help them. Don't think about it. She'd been so young, so stupidly, impossibly young, back when helping people felt like something you just did, not something you calculated the cost of first. Marcus had taught her to calculate costs, had taught her that kindness was weakness and trust was a weapon other people used against you, had taught her to make herself small and quiet and invisible because visibility meant pain. But that girl in the storm hadn't known any of that yet. That girl had just acted. Maybe Victor was right. Maybe somewhere under all the damage, that girl still existed. The door opened and a nurse came in with more warm blankets. "How are you feeling?" she asked, tucking them around Eliza's legs. "I don't know," Eliza said honestly. "Everything feels unreal." "That's the shock," the nurse said kindly. "Give yourself time. You've been through something terrible." After the nurse left, Eliza closed her eyes. The contractions were still coming, regular and insistent. Her body doing what bodies did, regardless of fear or exhaustion or the fact that she had no idea how to be a mother. Hours passed in a blur of medical checks and warm blankets and pain that came in waves. Dr. Chen checked her dilation. 7 centimeters, then 8, then the point of no return where the only way out was through. "You're doing so well," the nurse said, wiping Eliza's forehead with a cool cloth. "Just a little longer." But Eliza barely heard her. She was somewhere else now, somewhere deep inside herself where there was only the work of bringing life into the world. Push. Breathe. Push again. The pain was enormous, all-consuming, and for the first time in years it wasn't Marcus hurting her, it was her body doing exactly what it needed to do. "One more," Dr. Chen said. "One more big push and we'll have her." Eliza bore down with everything she had left, and suddenly there was a release and a sound, high and thin and absolutely perfect. A baby crying. Her baby. "It's a girl," Dr. Chen announced, but Eliza already knew, had known for months. They placed her daughter on her chest, this tiny screaming thing with a face red from effort and lungs that clearly worked just fine. Eliza wrapped her arms around her, feeling the warmth, the weight, the impossible reality of her. "Hi," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm your mom, and I'm never letting anything hurt you." The baby quieted at her voice, eyes trying to focus. She had dark hair, lots of it, and when she finally opened her eyes fully, they were pale green, like Eliza's, like her grandmother's. Not like Marcus at all. "Have you chosen a name?" the nurse asked gently. Eliza looked down at her daughter, at this perfect thing that had survived everything Marcus had put them through. A name rose up from somewhere deep, something her grandmother had loved. "Grace," she said. "Her name is Grace." They took Grace to clean her up and run tests, promising Eliza they'd bring her right back. Left alone, Eliza stared at the ceiling, her body aching and exhausted and lighter than it had been in months. She'd done it. Grace was here. They were both alive. The door opened and Victor stepped in. He looked rumpled, his tie loosened, like he'd been waiting for hours. When he saw Eliza, relief crossed his face. "How are you?" "Tired," Eliza said. "But okay. She's perfect. Grace is perfect. Grace, Victor repeated. That's a good name. He pulled a chair beside the bed and sat down. For a while, neither of them spoke. Outside, dawn was starting to break, pink light touching the horizon. Thank you, Eliza said finally, for finding me, for getting me out. You don't need to thank me, Victor said quietly. I told you. I pay my debts. This is more than a debt. Victor was quiet for a long moment, then, maybe. Or maybe I spent 9 years wondering what happened to the girl who helped a stranger without asking why. Maybe I needed to know if people like you actually survived in this world. He looked at her. I'm glad you did. The nurse brought Grace back, bundled in pink blankets and a tiny knit cap. Eliza took her daughter carefully, marveling at how small she was, how fragile. Grace's eyes were closed now, her face peaceful. What happens next? Eliza asked. You rest, Victor said. You heal. When you're ready to leave the hospital, I have a place where you and Grace can stay, somewhere safe, somewhere Marcus will never find you. And after that? Victor smiled slightly. After that, you decide. What you want, where you want to go, who you want to be. He stood, straightening his jacket. You have time, Eliza. For the first time in a long time, you have time. He left after that, and Eliza was alone with her daughter and the morning light creeping across the hospital floor. Grace made small noises in her sleep, little squeaks and sighs that sounded almost like questions. Eliza traced a finger along her daughter's impossibly tiny hand, watching the fingers curl reflexively around hers. We're going to figure this out, she whispered. I don't know how, but we will. The words felt heavier than they should have, because the truth was, Eliza had no idea how to be a mother. She'd spent 5 years learning how to survive Marcus, how to make herself small enough that his anger would pass over her like a storm. Those weren't skills that translated into raising a child. A different nurse came in a few hours later with breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, fruit that looked fresh instead of bruised. Real food. Eliza's hand shook as she ate, her body not quite believing that she was allowed to finish the whole plate. Your blood work came back, the nurse said, adjusting the IV. You're severely anemic, vitamin D deficiency, malnutrition. Dr. Chen wants to keep you here for at least 3 days, maybe longer, depending on how you respond to treatment. 3 days in a hospital bed. 3 days of being warm and fed and safe. It felt like a vacation and a prison sentence at the same time. What about the baby? Eliza asked. Grace is small, but her vitals are good. We'll keep monitoring her, but so far she's doing everything she's supposed to. The nurse smiled. You did good, keeping her safe all that time. After the nurse left, Eliza tried to sleep, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dog shed, felt the cold, heard Marcus's voice telling her she'd brought this on herself, that if she'd just learned to keep her mouth shut, none of this would have happened. She jolted awake to find Victor standing in the doorway with a woman beside him. The woman was maybe 40, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun and eyes that assessed everything in the room before settling on Eliza. She wore slacks and a cream blouse, nothing flashy, but something about the way she carried herself suggested she was used to being obeyed. This is Maya Reeves, Victor said. She's going to help you with some legal matters. Maya stepped forward, offering her hand. Eliza shook it, feeling the calluses on the woman's palm. Not a desk person, then. Someone who'd worked with her hands. I'm a lawyer, Maya said, pulling up a chair. But I also used to work in victim advocacy. Victor called me because you're going to need someone who understands both sides of what you're dealing with. I don't have money for a lawyer, Eliza said quietly. You're not paying me. Victor is. Maya opened a leather folder, pulling out documents. Now here's where we stand. Marcus Rowan was arrested last night on multiple charges: domestic violence, false imprisonment, child endangerment. The DA is pushing for him to be held without bail, but his family is well connected in Riverwood. There's a chance he could get out. Eliza's stomach dropped. When? Best case scenario? He's locked up for 6 months before trial. Worst case? He makes bail by the end of the week. Maya's expression was steady, unflinching, which is why we're going to get a restraining order filed today. Emergency protective order first, then a permanent one. And we're going to make sure every judge, every cop, Every person in a 50-mile radius knows that if Marcus Rowan comes anywhere near you or Grace, he goes right back to jail. His family has influence in Riverwood, Maya interrupted. But Victor has influence everywhere else. And I promise you, Eliza, money and connections only go so far when the FBI gets interested in tax evasion and interstate criminal activity. Eliza looked at Victor, who stood by the window with his hands in his pockets. What did you do? I made some calls, Victor said mildly. Asked some questions. Turns out Marcus has been skimming from the feed store for years. His cousin in the sheriff's department has been looking the other way. There's a paper trail if you know where to look. So you found it. I have people who are very good at finding things. Maya tapped the folder. The point is, we're building a case that goes beyond domestic violence. We're showing a pattern of criminal behavior. That makes it harder for him to walk free, and it makes it easier to keep him away from you. Eliza felt something twist in her chest. Relief, maybe. Or terror at how quickly her life was being reorganized by people she barely knew. Why are you doing this? Maya's expression softened slightly. Because I've seen what happens when women don't have someone in their corner. And because Victor pays very well. She said it without apology, which somehow made Eliza trust her more. They spent the next hour going over paperwork, restraining orders, emergency custody arrangements, documentation of abuse. Maya took notes in precise handwriting, asking questions that made Eliza's face burn with shame. How long had the abuse been going on? Had Marcus ever hit her while she was pregnant? Had he prevented her from seeking medical care? Had he isolated her from friends and family? Yes, 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 yes. I know this is hard, Maya said when Eliza's voice started to crack. But the more documentation we have, the stronger the case. And I need you to understand something. None of this was your fault. You didn't cause it. You didn't deserve it. And you're not weak for staying. I feel weak, Eliza whispered. Survival isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing there is. Maya closed the folder. I'll file these this afternoon. In the meantime, rest. Let the doctors take care of you. And if you remember anything else, anything Marcus said or did that could help the case, write it down. After Maya left, Victor remained by the window. Outside, the hospital parking lot was filling up with morning visitors. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that somewhere upstairs a woman was trying to piece together the ruins of everything she'd thought she knew. You could have just given me money, Eliza said. Put me on a bus somewhere. Why go through all this? Victor turned to look at her. Because money doesn't solve the real problem. Marcus would have found you eventually. Men like him always do. They can't stand the idea of losing control. He crossed the room, sitting in the chair Maya had vacated. This way, he loses everything. His freedom, his reputation, his power. And you get to start over without looking over your shoulder. What if it doesn't work? What if he gets out and... Then I handle it. Victor's voice was flat, final. And trust me, Eliza, you don't want to know what that looks like. The threat hung in the air between them. Eliza should have been scared, should have been horrified. Instead, she felt something darker, something that whispered that maybe some people deserved whatever Victor would do to them. Grace started crying, a thin wail that cut through the tension. Eliza gathered her daughter up, feeling the solid weight of her, the realness. The nurse had shown her how to get Grace to latch, and after a few fumbling attempts, the baby settled into feeding. Victor watched them for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stood. I'll let you rest. If you need anything, tell the nurses. They know how to reach me. Victor. He paused at the door. Thank you for all of this. I know I keep saying it, but stop thanking me, he said quietly. You gave me my life back 9 years ago. This is just me returning the favor. The days blurred together after that. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, bringing food, teaching Eliza how to change diapers and swaddle and recognize Grace's different cries. Hungry cry, tired cry, uncomfortable cry. It all sounded the same to Eliza at first, but gradually she started to hear the differences. Dr. Chen stopped by every morning reviewing test results. Eliza's blood work was improving. The anemia was responding to supplements. Her body temperature had stabilized. Grace was gaining weight, eating well, showing no signs of the trauma her mother had endured. You're healing faster than I expected, Dr. Chen said on the third day. Physically, at least. But I want you to talk to someone. A therapist. What you've been through, it doesn't just go away because you're safe now. I know, Eliza said, though she wasn't sure she did. Maya came back that afternoon with papers to sign. The restraining order had been approved. Marcus was being held on $500,000 bail, which his family was scrambling to raise. The DA had added more charges based on what Maya's investigators had found: fraud, embezzlement, assault. It's not enough, Maya said bluntly. He might still get out, but we're doing everything we can to make sure that if he does, he stays far away from you. Victor had also delivered on his other promise. There was a place waiting for Eliza when she left the hospital, a furnished apartment in Casper, 2 hours from Riverwood, far enough that she wouldn't run into anyone who knew Marcus, close enough that Maya could still handle the legal proceedings. It's paid for, Victor said when he came to discuss the arrangements. 6 months up front. After that, we'll figure something out. I need to get a job, Eliza said. I can't keep taking your money. Why not? The question caught her off guard. Because I'm not your responsibility. You saved my life. That makes you my responsibility. Victor's tone left no room for argument. Besides, you just had a baby. You're recovering from years of abuse. Give yourself time before you start worrying about independence. Time. Everyone kept telling her she had time now. But time felt like a luxury she didn't know how to use. All she'd known for 5 years was survival, and survival didn't require time. It required hypervigilance, required anticipating Marcus's moods, required making herself invisible. She didn't know how to just exist without a threat looming over her. On the 4th day, Dr. Chen cleared them for discharge. A nurse brought in a car seat, brand new, still in the packaging, and showed Eliza how to buckle Grace in properly. Someone had also provided clothes, real clothes, not the hospital gown Eliza had been wearing, jeans that actually fit, a soft sweater, a winter coat that was warm without being bulky. Victor's assistant picked them out, the nurse said when Eliza asked. She's got good taste. The assistant had also provided a diaper bag stocked with everything a new mother might need. Diapers, wipes, formula, even though Eliza was breastfeeding, burp cloths, pacifiers, a receiving blanket with little yellow ducks embroidered on it. Yellow ducks, like the hats her grandmother used to knit. Eliza's hands shook as she packed up the few belongings she had. When she was done, she stood by the window with Grace in her arms, looking out at the parking lot where Victor's black SUV was waiting. This was it. The moment she stepped out of this room, her old life would be officially over. No more Marcus, no more Riverwood, no more pretending she was fine when she was dying inside. But she also wouldn't have this safe bubble. This space where nurses checked on her every few hours and Victor's money kept the world at bay. She'd be responsible for Grace, for herself, for figuring out how to be a person again. The thought was terrifying. A knock at the door made her turn. Victor stood there in his usual dark suit, expression neutral. Ready? No. Yes. The discharge process took another 30 minutes. Paperwork, prescriptions, follow-up appointments with specialists in Casper. Dr. Chen walked them out, her hand briefly touching Eliza's shoulder. You're stronger than you think, the doctor said. Remember that. The January air hit Eliza like a slap when they stepped outside. Not as cold as the night in the shed, but cold enough to make her pull Grace closer. Torres was driving the SUV, the same medic who'd treated her that first night. He smiled when he saw them. Good to see you on your feet, he said, opening the back door. Victor helped Eliza get Grace buckled into the car seat, his movements careful and precise. Then they were pulling out of the hospital parking lot, heading north toward Casper. Eliza watched the landscape roll by. Brown fields, scattered farms, mountains in the distance, their peaks white with snow. Wyoming looked different in daylight, less hostile, almost beautiful. The apartment is in a quiet complex, Victor said. 2nd floor. Security cameras in the hallways. Only one entrance, and it requires a key card. I've already had my people run background checks on your neighbors. No one with connections to Marcus or his family. You ran background checks on my neighbors? I run background checks on everyone. Victor said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. There's a grocery store 2 blocks away, a clinic 3 blocks over. The bus line runs right past the complex if you need it, but I've arranged for a car. Nothing fancy, just a reliable sedan. It's registered in a trust, so Marcus can't trace it. Eliza's head was spinning. You bought me a car? I'm loaning you a car. There's a difference. Victor glanced at her. You're going to need transportation. For Grace's doctor appointments. For your own appointments. For whatever you decide to do next. Whatever she decided to do next. The words felt impossibly large. They drove for another hour before the landscape started to change. More buildings, more traffic. Signs for Casper appearing on the highway. The city wasn't huge, maybe 60,000 people. But after Riverwood's 3,000, it felt enormous. Torres pulled into an apartment complex called Meadowbrook Estates. Generic name, generic buildings, the kind of place that existed in every mid-sized city in America. 3 identical brick buildings arranged in a U-shape around a parking lot. Dead grass poking through patches of snow. A playground that looked like it hadn't been used in months. It was the most beautiful thing Eliza had ever seen. Victor led them up an exterior staircase to apartment 2C. He unlocked the door, then stepped aside to let Eliza enter first. The apartment was small but clean. Living room with a couch and a television, kitchen with appliances that looked functional, if not new. A hallway leading to what she assumed were bedrooms and a bathroom. Everything was furnished in that neutral way that suggested it had been staged by someone who'd never actually lived there. But it was warm, and it was safe, and it was hers. There are 2 bedrooms, Victor said, walking through the space. I had my assistant set up the smaller one as a nursery. If you don't like how it's arranged, you can change it. Eliza followed him down the hallway. The nursery was painted a soft cream color, with a crib against one wall and a changing table beside it. There was a rocking chair by the window, shelves with baby books and stuffed animals, a mobile hanging over the crib with stars and moons. Her throat closed up. This is too much. It's a crib and some furniture, Victor said. Hardly too much. But it was too much. Because nobody had ever done something like this for Eliza without expecting something in return. And she kept waiting for Victor to tell her what he wanted, what the real price was for all of this generosity. What do you want from me? The question came out sharper than she intended. You've been searching for me for 9 years. You've spent, I don't even know how much money on all this. What's the point? What do you want? Victor was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I want to know that decent people still exist. I want to know that the world hasn't ground all the kindness out of everyone. And I want to know that the girl who saved my life got to have a life worth saving. He met her eyes. That's it. That's the point. Eliza didn't know what to say to that, didn't know how to process it. So she turned back to the nursery, blinking hard against the tears threatening to spill over. Thank you, she managed. Stop thanking me. But his voice was gentler than usual. They spent the next hour going over practical matters, where the fuse box was, how to work the thermostat, emergency numbers. Victor left cash in an envelope on the kitchen counter, enough to cover groceries and supplies for a month. He also left a phone, a simple smartphone with his number already programmed in. If you need anything, call. If Marcus shows up, call. If you just want to talk, call. He paused. I mean that. Anytime, day or night. Why would I want to talk to you? Eliza asked, and immediately regretted how rude it sounded. I just mean, you barely know me. I know you stopped in a thunderstorm to save 2 strangers. I know you kept a baby alive in conditions that would have killed most people. I know you're still standing when you have every right to have given up. Victor's gray eyes held hers. That's enough to know. After he left, Eliza stood in the middle of the living room with Grace asleep in her arms. The silence was overwhelming. No Marcus yelling, no television blaring, no sound at all except the distant hum of traffic and the building's heating system kicking on. She'd spent 5 years wishing for silence. Now that she had it, she didn't know what to do with it. Grace stirred, making a small sound. Eliza carried her to the nursery, laying her carefully in the crib. The baby settled immediately, her face peaceful. Eliza stood watching her, one hand on the crib rail, trying to memorize this moment. The first night in their new life. The first time they'd slept somewhere that Marcus didn't own. The apartment came with basic supplies, toilet paper, paper towels, dish soap, but the fridge was empty and the cupboards were bare. Eliza made a mental note to go grocery shopping tomorrow. Tonight, she was too exhausted to do anything except collapse. She took a shower in the small bathroom, letting hot water run over her until the tank went cold. The mirror was fogged when she got out, which was good. She wasn't ready to look at herself yet. Wasn't ready to see the woman who'd survived but didn't know how to live. There was a robe hanging on the back of the bathroom door, soft, cream-colored, with deep pockets. More of Victor's assistant's work. Eliza wrapped herself in it, feeling clean for the first time in days. In the master bedroom, she found more evidence of careful planning. The bed had been made with soft sheets and a thick comforter. There were pillows, real pillows, not the flat things Marcus had given her. The closet held a few basic pieces of clothing, all in her size. How Victor had known her size, she didn't want to think about. She lay down on the bed, meaning to rest for just a minute. She was asleep in seconds. She woke to Grace crying. The room was dark, and for a moment Eliza's heart seized with panic, thinking she was back in the dog shed. But then she felt the soft mattress, smelled the clean sheets, heard the thermostat clicking on, and reality reasserted itself. Safe. She was safe. Grace's cries were getting more urgent. Eliza stumbled to the nursery, flipping on the small lamp beside the rocking chair. The baby's face was red and scrunched, fists waving, hungry. Eliza picked her up, settling into the rocking chair, helping Grace latch. The baby's cries cut off immediately, replaced by small gulping sounds. Eliza leaned her head back, staring at the ceiling, feeling the pull and release as Grace fed. This was her life now, this tiny person who depended on her for everything, who didn't care about Eliza's trauma or fear or the fact that she had no idea what she was doing. Grace just needed food and warmth and safety, and somehow Eliza had to figure out how to provide all three. "We're going to be okay," she whispered. The words were becoming a mantra. "We're going to figure this out." When Grace finished eating, Eliza changed her diaper, still fumbling with the tabs, still worried she was doing it wrong, and laid her back in the crib. The baby fell asleep immediately, her tiny chest rising and falling. Eliza should have gone back to bed, should have slept while she could. But she was wide awake now, her mind racing. She wandered through the apartment, trailing her fingers along the walls, the furniture, the kitchen counter, proving to herself it was real. The envelope Victor had left sat on the counter. Eliza opened it, counting the bills inside. $2,000. More money than she'd seen in years. Marcus had controlled all their finances, giving her barely enough for groceries and keeping the rest for himself. She could buy food, real food, vegetables and fruit and meat that wasn't on sale because it was about to expire. She could buy diapers and formula as backup. She could buy clothes for Grace as she grew. The realization made her dizzy. She had money, she had a home, she had safety, all the things she'd been surviving without, suddenly available. But she also had Marcus somewhere in a jail cell, possibly making bail. Had a legal battle ahead that Maya said could take months. Had years of trauma that didn't just disappear because she'd escaped. Eliza sank onto the couch, pulling her knees up to her chest. The apartment was warm, but she felt cold anyway. The kind of cold that came from the inside, from carrying fear in your bones for so long it became part of you. The phone Victor had left buzzed on the coffee table. A text message. "You okay?" Eliza stared at it. It was 3 a.m. Normal people didn't text at 3 a.m. But apparently Victor wasn't normal people. She picked up the phone, her thumbs hovering over the keyboard. What was she supposed to say? That she was terrified? That she didn't know how to exist in a world where she wasn't waiting for the next blow? That safety felt more dangerous than the shed because at least in the shed she'd known what to expect? "I'm fine," she typed instead. The response came immediately. Liar. Despite everything, Eliza almost smiled. She deleted her message and tried again. "I don't know how to do this." "Do what?" "Any of it. Be a person. Be a mother. Be someone who isn't just surviving." The phone rang. Eliza nearly dropped it in surprise, then answered. "Hello?" "You don't have to figure it all out tonight," Victor said. His voice was quiet, like he was being careful not to disturb anyone. "You just have to get through tonight. Then tomorrow, you figure out tomorrow." "That's it? Just one day at a time?" "That's it." Sounds too simple. Most important things are. She heard him shift, heard what might have been a car door closing. "Where are you?" "Parking lot. I wanted to make sure you settled in okay." "You're outside?" Eliza got up, going to the living room window. Sure enough, she could see a black SUV parked near the entrance, interior light on.
It's 3 in the morning. I know what time it is. You should go home. I'm fine. You texted me at 3 in the morning. That's not fine. Oh. Victor's voice was a matter of fact, no judgment in it. But I'll go if you want me to. Eliza pressed her forehead against the cold glass. The parking lot was empty except for Victor's SUV and a handful of resident vehicles. Streetlights cast orange pools across the pavement. It looked exactly like what it was. A quiet Tuesday night in a mid-sized Wyoming city where nothing interesting ever happened. What if Marcus gets out? She asked quietly. Then I'll handle it. You keep saying that. What does that mean? Victor was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. It means Marcus Rowan will never hurt you again. Whatever that takes. Do you understand? Eliza understood. And she should have been horrified. Should have told Victor that violence wasn't the answer, that she didn't want blood on her hands, that there had to be a better way. Instead, she said, "Thank you. Get some sleep, Eliza. I'll check on you tomorrow." He hung up. Through the window, Eliza watched the SUV's interior light go dark. A moment later, the engine started and the vehicle pulled out of the parking lot, disappearing into the night. She stood at the window for a long time after that, watching the empty parking lot, waiting for something she couldn't name. Eventually, Grace started crying again, and Eliza went to tend to her daughter, falling into the rhythm that would define her life for the next few months. Feed, change, rock, sleep. Wake up and do it all again. And somewhere in the repetition, somewhere in the exhaustion and the fear and the impossible weight of responsibility, Eliza started to feel something she hadn't felt in years. Not happiness. That would come later, if it came at all. But something smaller. Something that felt almost like hope. The hope lasted exactly 4 days. On Thursday morning, Maya called with news that made Eliza's stomach drop to her feet. Marcus's family had posted bail. He'd walked out of county lockup 3 hours ago, signed some papers promising to stay away from Eliza, and disappeared. The restraining order is still active, Maya said, her voice tight with frustration. If he comes within 500 feet of you, he goes right back to jail. But I need you to be careful, Eliza. His family's already talking about how you're lying, how you manipulated the situation. They're going to fight this. Eliza sat on the nursery floor with Grace on a blanket beside her, phone pressed to her ear, trying to breathe. Where is he? We don't know. He's supposed to check in with the monitoring service, but that doesn't tell us his exact location. Maya paused. I've already called Victor. He's sending people to watch your building. I don't need bodyguards. Yes, you do. Maya's tone left no room for argument. Marcus just lost his wife, his home, his reputation, and potentially his freedom. Men like that don't take losses well. You need protection until we know what he's planning. After they hung up, Eliza sat very still, listening to the sounds of the apartment, the heating system, traffic outside. Grace making small noises as she discovered her own hands. Normal sounds, safe sounds. But now Marcus was out there somewhere, and every sound felt like a threat. She picked up Grace, holding her close, and went to the window. The parking lot looked the same as always. A few cars, dead grass, the playground. But now she studied every vehicle, every shadow, looking for him. Victor showed up an hour later with 2 men who looked like they'd been carved from granite. He introduced them as Webb and Karos, didn't specify what they did, and positioned them in a car near the building's entrance with instructions to report anyone who looked suspicious. This is insane, Eliza said, watching through the window as the men settled into their vehicle. I can't live like this. I can't have armed guards following me around. You can, and you will, Victor said flatly. At least until Marcus shows his hand. What if he doesn't? What if he just disappears? Moves on? Victor looked at her like she'd suggested the sun might rise in the west. He's not going to disappear. Men like Marcus don't let go. They escalate. He moved to the kitchen, opening the fridge, frowning at the contents. When's the last time you ate? I don't know. This morning? It's 3 in the afternoon. I've been busy. Victor pulled out ingredients, bread, cheese, deli meat that his assistant had apparently stocked. He made sandwiches with efficient movements, like this was something he did often. When he handed her a plate, Eliza took it automatically. Eat, he said. You can't take care of Grace if you're not taking care of yourself. The sandwich was good, better than anything Eliza would have made for herself.
She ate mechanically, watching Victor move through her kitchen like he belonged there. He'd traded his usual suit for dark jeans and a sweater, and if she didn't know better, she'd think he was just a normal person instead of whatever he actually was. "What do you do?" she asked. "For work. I mean, you said you're a businessman, but that doesn't explain." She gestured vaguely at the apartment, the guards, the casual way he'd dismantled Marcus's entire life. Victor was quiet for a moment, pouring coffee into 2 mugs. "I run a private security firm, risk assessment, asset protection. Sometimes we recover things that have been taken. Sometimes we prevent things from being taken in the first place." "That's vague." "It's supposed to be." He handed her a mug. "The point is, I have resources, and I'm using them to make sure you're safe." "Why?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "I know you said it's because I saved your life, but that was 9 years ago. You could have just sent me money, could have made sure I was okay and moved on. Why this?" Victor sat down across from her, cradling his own mug. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, "When you pulled me out of that car, I was in the middle of the worst year of my life. I just lost someone important, lost them to violence I should have prevented, and I was angry. So angry, I was making mistakes, taking risks I shouldn't have taken." He looked at her. "That car accident was my fault. I was driving too fast in conditions I knew were dangerous because some part of me didn't care if I lived or died." Eliza set down her sandwich, unable to eat anymore. "Then you showed up," Victor continued, 19 years old, soaking wet, pulling 2 strangers from a wreck because it was the right thing to do. You didn't hesitate, didn't ask if we deserved help. You just helped." His gray eyes held hers. "That night, lying in the hospital, I made myself a promise. If I survived, if I got my life back together, I was going to find you. Make sure saving me hadn't cost you anything. Make sure you got to have the life you deserved." "That's crazy," Eliza whispered. "Maybe, but I'm a man who keeps his promises." Victor stood, carrying his mug to the sink. "So yes, I could have just sent money, but that wouldn't have been enough. Not for what you gave me." Before Eliza could respond, Grace started crying. She went to pick up her daughter, grateful for the interruption, grateful not to have to find words for what Victor had just told her. The days settled into a new rhythm after that. Eliza took care of Grace. Victor or his assistant checked in daily. Webb and Caro sat in their car, silent sentinels who changed shifts every 8 hours. Maya called with legal updates, court dates being set, Marcus's lawyer filing motions, the slow grinding machinery of justice. And Marcus stayed gone. No sightings, no attempts to contact her. Nothing. It should have been a relief. Instead, it felt like waiting for a bomb to go off. 2 weeks after his release, Eliza finally worked up the nerve to leave the apartment. She needed groceries, needed to feel like a person instead of a prisoner. She bundled Grace into her car seat, loaded her into the sedan Victor had provided, and drove to the grocery store with Webb following in his SUV. The store was crowded for a Wednesday morning. Eliza pushed a cart through the aisles, Grace strapped to her chest in a carrier, trying to remember how to be normal. How to pick out produce. How to compare prices. How to exist in public without constantly looking over her shoulder. She was in the cereal aisle when she saw him. Not Marcus. Someone worse. Dylan Rowan, Marcus's younger brother, standing near the checkout lanes with a woman Eliza didn't recognize. He was dressed in work clothes, Carhartt jacket, boots, the same uniform every Rowan man wore. And he was staring right at her. Eliza's hands tightened on the shopping cart. The restraining order covered Marcus, but not his family. Dylan could talk to her, could approach her, could make her life hell without technically breaking any laws. She turned her cart around, heading for a different aisle, but Dylan was already moving. He cut her off near the dairy section, blocking her path. "Eliza." His voice was cold. "We need to talk." "I don't have anything to say to you." She tried to go around him, but he shifted, staying in her way. "You got my brother arrested, got him thrown in jail like some kind of criminal." "He is a criminal." The words came out steadier than Eliza felt. "He locked me in a shed while I was pregnant. He said you're lying, said you made all this up because you wanted to leave him and take his money." Eliza almost laughed. "What money? Marcus barely paid the bills." "You're making our family look bad." Dylan stepped closer, and Eliza instinctively backed up, her hand going to Grace's back.
You need to drop the charges. Tell the police you lied. Fix this. I'm not lying. Then you're confused, misremembering things. His jaw was tight, a muscle jumping. Marcus might have gotten rough sometimes, but what husband doesn't? You don't destroy a man's life over a few arguments.
Bombas chili saw it.
The casual dismissal of what Marcus had done, reducing years of abuse to a few arguments, made something crack open in Eliza's chest. For 5 years, she'd made herself small, made herself quiet, swallowed her anger because expressing it only made things worse. But Marcus wasn't here, and neither was Victor's calm, controlled approach to handling threats. "Get out of my way," Eliza said, her voice low and sharp. "Or what? You'll call your bodyguard? That rich guy who's been sniffing around?" Dylan's smile was mean. "Yeah, we know about him. Victor Hale, big shot from Cheyenne, thinks he can buy his way into other people's business. He can't protect you forever." "He doesn't need to protect me forever, just long enough for your brother to go to prison." Dylan's face flushed red. He opened his mouth to respond, but someone beat him to it. "Is there a problem here?" Webb materialized beside Eliza, his bulk somehow making the grocery aisle feel small. He didn't touch Dylan, didn't make any threatening moves, but his presence alone was enough to make Dylan step back. "Just talking to my sister-in-law," Dylan said, trying to sound casual. "Mrs. Rowan doesn't want to talk to you." Webb's voice was flat. "I suggest you finish your shopping elsewhere." For a moment, Dylan looked like he might argue. Then he saw Karos approaching from the other direction, and something in his expression changed. Fear, maybe, or at least recognition that he was outnumbered. "This isn't over," he said, looking at Eliza. "You can't hide behind hired muscle forever." He left. Eliza stood there, shaking, one hand still pressed against Grace's back. "You okay?" Webb asked quietly. "No." But she pushed her cart forward anyway, finishing her shopping with mechanical efficiency. The joy of being in public, of feeling normal, had evaporated. Now she just wanted to get home. When she got back to the apartment, Victor was waiting in the parking lot. One look at her face and his expression went hard. "What happened?" She told him. About Dylan. About the threats disguised as family concern. About how small she'd felt, even with bodyguards nearby. Victor pulled out his phone, made a call. "I need information on Dylan Rowan. Employment, residence, criminal history, everything." He listened for a moment. "No, I need it today. Thank you." He hung up, then looked at Eliza. "He won't bother you again. You can't control everyone in Marcus's family. Watch me." There was something cold in Victor's eyes, something that reminded Eliza that for all his careful politeness, this was a dangerous man. "The Rowans think they run Riverwood. They think their name gives them immunity. I'm going to teach them they're wrong." "How?" "Dylan works for the county road crew. Turns out there have been some complaints about equipment going missing. Fuel disappearing, nothing proven, but enough smoke that an investigation would be warranted." Victor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm very good at finding smoke." "You're going to get him fired?" "I'm going to make it clear that harassing you comes with consequences. If he's smart, he'll back off. If he's not, he'll learn the hard way." Eliza should have objected. Should have said this was too much, that she didn't want Victor destroying people's lives on her behalf. But she thought about Dylan's casual dismissal of what Marcus had done. Thought about how he'd cornered her in a grocery store while she was holding her infant daughter. "Okay," she said instead. They went inside, Victor carrying the groceries while Eliza handled Grace. He unpacked everything, organizing the fridge with more care than necessary, and Eliza realized he was stalling, waiting for something. "What?" she asked. "Maya called while you were out. The DA offered Marcus a plea deal. 5 years in prison if he pleads guilty to the assault and false imprisonment charges." 5 years. Eliza sank onto the couch, processing this. What did he say? He turned it down. Wants to go to trial. His lawyer thinks they can win. Can they? Victor sat beside her, careful to leave space between them. It's possible. The physical evidence is limited. You never went to a hospital, never documented the abuse. It's your word against his, and his family will testify that he was a good husband, that you're unstable, that you made all of this up.
The words felt like blows. So I go through everything, the shed, the hospital, leaving, all of it, and he just walks free? I didn't say that. Victor's voice was calm. I said it's possible, but Maya's building a strong case. The financial records showing he controlled all the money, the statements from neighbors who heard screaming, the condition you were in when we found you. And if we can get Marcus to lose his temper on the stand, show the jury who he really is, we'll win. And if we don't, then I handle it. Victor said it like he was commenting on the weather, like discussing what he'd do to Marcus if the legal system failed was perfectly normal. Eliza looked at him. This man who'd spent 9 years searching for her, who'd reorganized his life to make sure she was safe, who spoke about violence with the same casualness other people used to discuss dinner plans. She should have been scared of him. Should have recognized that Victor Hale was exactly the kind of dangerous person her grandmother had warned her about. Instead, she felt safer than she had in years. I need to ask you something, she said, and I need you to tell me the truth, always. That night, the night you crashed, what were you really doing? What kind of business requires the level of security and resources you have? Victor was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully neutral. My company provides protection for people who operate in gray areas, wealthy individuals who need discretion, businesses that face threats from competitors or governments. Sometimes we recover stolen assets. Sometimes we prevent theft. Sometimes we make problems disappear. He met her eyes. Everything I do is legal, but I won't pretend it's always ethical. Are you dangerous? Yes? The simple honesty of it was almost jarring. Should I be afraid of you? No. Victor leaned back, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked tired. I've done things I'm not proud of. Hurt people who probably deserved it. Made choices that kept me up at night. But I've never hurt someone who didn't hurt others first. And I would never, ever hurt you or Grace. Eliza believed him. Maybe she was being stupid. Maybe this was just another kind of trap. Another man who'd eventually show his true colors. But looking at Victor now, seeing the exhaustion in his eyes, the careful way he'd rebuilt his entire life around a promise to a stranger, she believed him. Okay, she said. Okay. I trust you. The words felt massive. Eliza hadn't trusted anyone in 5 years, hadn't let herself believe that someone might actually have her best interests at heart. But sitting here with Victor, with his honest admission of who he was, she felt something shift. I trust you to do what you think is right, even if I don't always understand it. Victor looked at her for a long moment, something complicated crossing his face. Then he stood, collecting his coat. I should go. Let you rest. Victor, he paused at the door. Thank you for being honest. It's the least I owe you. After he left, Eliza sat in the quiet apartment, Grace asleep in her bassinet, and thought about trust, about how easily it could be broken and how hard it was to rebuild, about how she'd given Marcus her trust and he'd used it to destroy her. But Victor was different. He'd shown her who he was from the beginning. Dangerous, yes, but honest about it. He didn't pretend to be something he wasn't. Didn't hide his capacity for violence behind a nice guy facade. Maybe that's what trust really was. Not believing someone was perfect, but believing they'd be honest about their imperfections. The next few weeks were quiet. Dylan didn't approach her again. Apparently Victor's warning had been effective. Marcus stayed in Riverwood, making his court appearances, maintaining his innocence. The legal machinery ground forward with agonizing slowness. Eliza fell into routines. Morning walks with Grace in the stroller, Webb following at a discreet distance. Afternoons spent reading baby books and trying to figure out what all of Grace's different cries meant. Evenings when Victor would stop by with dinner, staying to eat, and talk about nothing important. She was starting to feel almost normal when everything fell apart. It was a Tuesday in late February when Maya called, her voice shaking. Eliza, you need to get somewhere safe, right now. What happened? Marcus escaped custody. He was being transported to a hearing and the van was ambushed. 2 guards are in the hospital. Marcus is gone. The phone nearly slipped from Eliza's hand. What do you mean, gone? I mean, he's in the wind. Could be anywhere. The police are looking, but... Maya's voice cracked. You need protection. Where are you? Home. The apartment. Stay there. Lock the doors. I'm calling Victor. Eliza hung up and immediately went to check the locks. Front door, balcony door, windows. Everything secure. Grace was napping in the nursery, oblivious to the sudden shift from safety to danger. Her phone rang. Victor. I'm 5 minutes away, he said before she could speak. Webb and Karos are already on their way up. Let them in. The knock came seconds later. Eliza checked the peephole, saw Webb's familiar face, and opened the door. Both men entered quickly, already scanning the apartment. We're going to secure the perimeter, Webb said. Mister?
Hale wants you packed and ready to move in 10 minutes. Move where? Somewhere Marcus can't find you. Eliza's mind was racing. He doesn't know where I live. The apartment's not in my name. How would he even... His family has resources too, Karos said, pulling out his phone. And they've had weeks to dig. We can't risk that they haven't found this place. Victor arrived 6 minutes later with 2 more men Eliza had never seen. He took one look at her face and crossed the room, his hands settling on her shoulders. Listen to me, he said, his voice calm despite the chaos. I have a safe house outside Cheyenne, 3 hours from here. Secure facility, armed guards, everything you need. You're going to stay there until we find Marcus. What about the trial? My appointments? I can't just disappear. Yes, you can. Maya will handle the legal stuff. Your doctor will understand. Grace's pediatrician will understand. His grip tightened slightly. But none of that matters if Marcus gets to you first. You think he's coming here? I think he's desperate. And desperate men do desperate things. Victor released her, stepping back. Pack clothes for you and Grace. Essentials only. We leave in 10 minutes. Eliza moved on autopilot, throwing things into the diaper bag. Clothes, formula, diapers. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely zip the bag closed. This was it. The moment she'd been dreading since Marcus walked out of jail. He was out there somewhere, probably armed, definitely angry, and coming for her. She picked up Grace, who woke immediately, and started crying. Eliza held her close, whispering reassurances she didn't believe, trying to keep her own terror from transferring to her daughter. Ready, she told Victor. They moved quickly. Victor took the diaper bag. Webb carried the portable bassinet. Karos led the way, checking the hallway before gesturing them forward. They took the stairs instead of the elevator, moving down 2 flights in tense silence. The parking lot was dark. Victor's hand stayed on Eliza's back, guiding her toward a different SUV. Black, windows tinted, engine already running. He opened the back door, helped her get Grace settled in the car seat, then climbed in beside her. Go, he told the driver. They pulled out fast, Webb and Karos following in a second vehicle. Eliza watched the apartment complex disappear through the rear window, this place that had been home for less than a month already, becoming part of her past. What if he finds the safe house? She asked quietly. He won't. Victor's voice was absolutely certain. And if somehow he does, he'll have to go through me to get to you. The way he said it, calm, factual, like he was stating the weather, made Eliza believe him. Victor would put himself between her and Marcus, would fight, would kill if necessary. The thought should have horrified her. Instead, she felt something else, something that felt almost like relief, because for the first time in her life, someone was willing to fight for her. Not because she'd earned it, not because she'd done everything right, but simply because Victor had decided she was worth protecting, and maybe that was enough. They drove through the night, leaving Casper behind, heading south toward Cheyenne and whatever waited for them there. Grace fell back asleep, her small face peaceful despite the chaos. Eliza watched the darkness roll past, Victor's presence beside her solid and steady, and tried not to think about what would happen when Marcus finally made his move. Because he would make a move. Men like Marcus always did, and when he did, Eliza would have to decide who she wanted to be. The woman who'd survived by staying quiet, or someone new entirely. The safe house wasn't what Eliza had expected. She'd pictured something industrial, concrete walls, security cameras, the kind of place that looked like what it was. Instead, Victor pulled up to a ranch-style home set back from the road, surrounded by trees and rolling hills. Warm light glowed from the windows. Smoke curled from the chimney. It looked like somewhere a family might live, not a fortress. "This is it?" she asked as the SUV stopped in the circular driveway. "Appearances matter," Victor said, climbing out.
No one looks twice at a house that fits the neighborhood. He helped her with grace while the driver grabbed their bags. The front door opened before they reached it, revealing a woman in her 50s with graying hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that cataloged everything in seconds. "This is Sarah," Victor said. "She manages the property." Sarah nodded to Eliza, then looked at Grace. "Beautiful baby. How old?" 3 weeks. Eliza's voice came out hoarse. The adrenaline from the escape was wearing off, leaving exhaustion in its wake. "Let's get you settled." Sarah stepped aside, gesturing them in. "I prepared the east wing. 2 bedrooms, private bathroom, sitting area. Everything you'll need." The interior was as deceptively normal as the exterior. Hardwood floors, comfortable furniture, artwork on the walls. But as they walked through, Eliza noticed the details. Security keypads at every door. Windows with steel reinforcement barely visible beneath the curtains. Cameras hidden in smoke detectors and light fixtures. Sarah led them down a hallway to a suite that was nicer than the Casper apartment. The main bedroom had a queen bed with a thick quilt. The nursery was already set up with a crib and changing table. The sitting area had a couch, television, and small kitchenette. "There's formula in the cabinet, diapers in the closet," Sarah said, opening doors to show Eliza where everything was. "Meals are served in the main dining room at 8, noon, and 6. But if you need something outside those times, just use the intercom." She pointed to a panel on the wall. "Press the red button for emergencies, yellow for staff, green for Mr. Hale." After Sarah left, Eliza stood in the middle of the sitting room holding Grace, trying to process that this was her life now. Running, hiding, completely dependent on Victor's resources and goodwill. "I know it's not ideal," Victor said quietly. He was standing near the door, giving her space. "But you're safe here. The property has armed security, surveillance. No one gets in without authorization." "How long?" "However long it takes to find Marcus." "And if you don't find him? If he just disappears?" Eliza's voice cracked. "I can't live in a safe house forever, Victor. Grace deserves better than growing up in hiding." "You won't have to." He crossed the room, stopping a few feet away. "I have people looking. Every contact Marcus has, every place he might run, we're covering it. He's going to make a mistake, and when he does, we'll be ready." "And then what? What? Make him disappear?" Victor's expression didn't change. "I'll do whatever needs to be done to keep you safe." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Eliza knew she should push back, should demand that Victor promise to let the law handle Marcus. But she was tired of being afraid, tired of living with the constant threat of violence. "Okay," she said instead. "Okay. Do what needs to be done." She met his eyes. "I'm done being his victim." Something shifted in Victor's face. Not quite approval, but close. "Get some rest. I'll be in the main house if you need anything." After he left, Eliza fed Grace and put her down in the crib. The baby settled immediately, exhausted from the chaos. Eliza stood watching her sleep, one hand on the crib rail, and tried to remember what it felt like to not be running. She must have dozed off on the couch because she woke to her phone buzzing. Maya. "The police found the van," Maya said without preamble. "Marcus killed one of the guards, shot him in the head during the escape. They're upgrading the charges to murder." Eliza's mouth went dry. "He killed someone?" "Yes, which means if they catch him, he's looking at life in prison. No plea deals, no early release." Maya paused. "It also means he has nothing to lose. If he comes after you, he's going to be desperate and violent. Victor was right to move you." After they hung up, Eliza sat in the dark, processing this new information. Marcus had killed someone, had looked another human being in the face and pulled the trigger. The man she'd been married to was a murderer. She'd always known he was dangerous, had felt his fists, his rage, his absolute need to control. But this was different. This was premeditated violence. This was Marcus deciding someone's life was worth less than his freedom. The green button on the intercom seemed to glow in the darkness. Eliza pressed it before she could talk herself out of it. Victor answered immediately. "What's wrong? Can you come here? Please?" He arrived within minutes, still dressed despite the late hour. Eliza let him in, then sank back onto the couch, her hands shaking. "Maya called," she said. "Marcus killed one of the guards." Victor's jaw tightened. "I know. I got the same report. He's never coming back peacefully, is he? Even if the police find him, he's going to fight. Probably. So what happens when they corner him, when he realizes he's caught? Eliza looked up at Victor. He's going to try to take people with him. And if he knows where I am, I'll be first on that list.
He's not going to find you. You can't promise that. Her voice was rising, panic bleeding through. You can't promise he won't get lucky, won't bribe the right person or follow the right lead or just stumble across me at the worst possible moment. Victor sat down beside her, close enough that she could feel the heat from his body. You're right. I can't promise he'll never find you, but I can promise that if he does, I'll be between you and him, always. That's not enough. Then what do you need? Eliza didn't know how to answer that. What she needed was for Marcus to not exist, for the past 5 years to be erased, for Grace to grow up in a world where her father wasn't a murderer and her mother wasn't broken. Since she couldn't have any of that, she settled for leaning against Victor's shoulder, letting herself take comfort from his presence. He went still for a moment, then carefully put his arm around her, and they sat like that in the dark while Grace slept and the safe house kept watch around them. The days that followed were strange. Eliza fell into a routine inside the safe house, feeding Grace, reading books from the extensive library, taking walks in the enclosed garden where Sarah grew vegetables and herbs. Victor visited daily, sometimes staying for meals, sometimes just checking in. Webb and Karos traded shifts with other security personnel whose names Eliza never learned. It was comfortable and suffocating in equal measure. On the 5th day, Maya arrived with an update. She looked tired, her usual professional composure fraying at the edges. The trial's been postponed indefinitely, she said, accepting the coffee Sarah poured. With Marcus on the run and wanted for murder, the DA is focusing on the manhunt. The domestic violence charges are secondary now. So what does that mean for me? Eliza asked. It means you wait. The restraining order is still active, but it doesn't mean much when the person it's restraining is already breaking bigger laws. Maya pulled out her tablet, scrolling through documents. I've been working on contingency plans. If Marcus is caught alive and goes to trial for murder, we can use that to strengthen the abuse case. Show a pattern of violence. But if he's killed during capture, or if he disappears completely, you'll need to file for divorce in absentia and fight his family for custody rights. His family can't seriously think they deserve custody. They can and they will. The Rowans are already talking about how Marcus was a good father who never got to meet his daughter, how you're an unfit mother who ran away with their grandchild. Maya's expression was grim. They're building a narrative. We need to be ready to counter it. Eliza looked at Grace, sleeping peacefully in her carrier. The idea of the Rowans getting anywhere near her daughter made her stomach turn. What do I need to do? Document everything. Your recovery, your care of Grace, any contact from the Rowan family. And when it's safe, we'll start building your independent life. Job, permanent housing, proof that you can provide for Grace without Victor's help. Maya hesitated. No offense to Mr. Haley, but judges don't like to see women completely dependent on men who aren't their husbands. It raises questions. After Maya left, Eliza stood in the garden, watching the sun set behind the trees. The air was cold but not biting. March in Wyoming, winter loosening its grip but not quite ready to let go. Victor found her there 20 minutes later. He'd been in meetings all day, and he looked exhausted, his tie loosened and dark circles under his eyes. Maya told me what she said, he started, about you needing independence. She's right. Eliza didn't look at him. I can't live off your charity forever. It's not charity. Then what is it? Victor was quiet for a long moment. Honestly, I don't know anymore. It started as a debt, became a promise. Now it's just... He stopped, seeming to search for words. Now it's just what I do, making sure you're okay. That's not sustainable. Probably not. He moved to stand beside her, both of them watching the darkening sky. But I'm not ready to stop yet. Something in his voice made Eliza turn to look at him. In the fading light, his face was shadowed, unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, something raw and honest that made her breath catch. Why? She asked quietly. Because somewhere between finding you in that shed and now, you stopped being an obligation. Victor's gray eyes met hers. You became someone I care about. You and Grace both. The admission hung between them, fragile and dangerous. Eliza knew she should step back, should remind Victor that she was barely divorced, still healing, completely unprepared for anything that looked like a relationship. Instead, she said, "I care about you too." Victor's expression shifted, surprise, then something softer. He reached out slowly, giving her time to move away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His hand lingered, warm against her cheek. "I don't want to rush you," he said. "I don't want to be another person who takes advantage when you're vulnerable." "You're not." Eliza's voice was barely a whisper. "You're the first person in years who's treated me like I matter. You do matter." He leaned closer, and Eliza knew he was going to kiss her, knew she could stop it with a word. But she didn't want to stop it, didn't want to be afraid anymore, didn't want to let Marcus steal this from her too. Their lips met softly, tentatively, like they were both afraid of breaking something fragile. Victor's hand cupped her face, his touch gentle in a way that made Eliza's chest ache. She kissed him back, tasting coffee, and something warmer, feeling the solid reality of him against her. When they pulled apart, Victor rested his forehead against hers. "We can take this slow," he said. "However slow you need." "Okay." Eliza's heart was racing. "Slow." They went inside as the last light faded from the sky. Sarah had left dinner warming in the kitchen, some kind of stew that smelled incredible. They ate together, talking about nothing important, carefully not acknowledging the shift between them. Grace woke up crying halfway through the meal. Eliza went to tend to her, and when she came back, Victor was washing dishes at the sink like he belonged there. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I know." But he kept washing. That night, after Victor left and Grace was asleep, Eliza lay in bed staring at the ceiling. She'd kissed Victor Hale, had admitted she cared about him, had let herself want something beyond just survival. The thought terrified her, but it also felt like the first real choice she'd made in years. 3 days later, everything changed. Eliza was in the garden with Grace when Sarah appeared, moving fast. "Inside, now!" "What's wrong?" Marcus was spotted in Cheyenne, 2 miles from here. Sarah already had her phone out, calling someone. "Webb's bringing the car around. Mr. Hale wants you moved to a secondary location immediately." The familiar panic flooded Eliza's system. She grabbed Grace and ran for the house, Sarah right behind her. Inside, armed men were moving with purpose, checking locks, pulling weapons from hidden compartments. Webb appeared, already wearing body armor. "We're taking the back road. Karos will drive. I'll ride shotgun. Stay low and stay quiet." "Where's Victor?" "Meeting us at the secondary location." Webb took the diaper bag from her shoulder. "Let's move." They were halfway to the garage when the power went out. The house plunged into darkness. Emergency lights kicked on immediately, casting everything in red. Sarah swore, already running toward the security room. "That's not normal," Karos said, his weapon drawn. "Someone cut the main line." Webb's radio crackled. A voice Eliza didn't recognize. "Perimeter breach. East fence. Multiple contacts." "Go, go, go!" Webb pushed Eliza toward the garage. "Get her out of here!" They burst through the door just as gunfire erupted from somewhere outside. Eliza stumbled, clutching Grace, her ears ringing from the sudden violence. Karos grabbed her arm, pulling her toward an SUV with the engine already running. "Get in the back. Keep your head down." Eliza dove into the vehicle, covering Grace's body with her own. Karos jumped into the driver's seat, and they were moving before he'd even closed the door. The garage door was rising slowly, too slowly. Through the gap, Eliza could see muzzle flashes in the darkness. Men shooting at each other. The organized chaos of a coordinated attack. They scraped through the opening with inches to spare, Karos flooring it the moment they cleared the garage. The SUV fishtailed on the gravel, then found traction, racing toward the back road. Behind them, the safe house was lit up like a war zone. Eliza twisted in her seat, watching it disappear, wondering if Sarah had made it to safety. Wondering how many people were dying because Marcus wanted her back. "Is he here?" she asked. "Is Marcus part of this?" "Don't know." Karos's eyes were on the road, his jaw tight. But this level of coordination, he's got help. Professional help. They drove for 20 minutes on back roads before Karos pulled over and grabbed his phone. "Webb, status." Eliza couldn't hear the response, but Karos's expression darkened.
Copy that. We're proceeding to Nest 2. He hung up. The attack's contained. 4 hostiles down, 2 in custody. No casualties on our side. What about Sarah? She's fine. Locked down the security room and called in backup. Karos pulled back onto the road. Mr. Hale's on his way to meet us. The secondary location was an actual bunker, concrete and steel hidden in the hills outside Cheyenne. When they pulled up, Victor was already there, pacing in front of the entrance. He yanked open Eliza's door before the SUV had fully stopped. Are you hurt? His hands were on her shoulders, his eyes scanning her face. We're fine. Just scared. Victor pulled her into a hug, careful of Grace between them. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought the safe house was secure. It was secure. They cut the power. Eliza was shaking now, the adrenaline crash hitting hard. How did they even find us? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Victor released her, his expression going cold. And when I do, whoever gave up that location is going to regret it. Inside the bunker, Eliza discovered that secondary location was an understatement. This wasn't a safe house. It was a fortress. Steel doors, reinforced walls, a command center with monitors showing every angle of the surrounding area. Sleeping quarters that felt more like a luxury hotel than a military installation. A medic checked them both over. Grace had slept through the entire attack somehow, while Victor made calls in the command center. Through the open door, Eliza could hear fragments of conversation, demanding answers, ordering investigations. His voice was cold and precise, and she was reminded again that Victor Hale was not a man to be crossed. Webb arrived an hour later with an update. 2 of the captured attackers were talking. They'd been hired through an intermediary, paid to breach the safe house and extract a woman and baby. They didn't know who hired them, didn't know why, just knew the money was good and the job was supposed to be simple. It was Marcus, Eliza said. Everyone turned to look at her. Who else would it be? Marcus is on the run with nothing, Webb said. These were professionals, well-equipped. That kind of operation costs money he doesn't have. Then his family paid for it. Eliza's voice was steady despite the fear coursing through her. They said they'd do whatever it took to protect him. To get Grace. Victor's expression went dangerous. Then the Rowans just made a very expensive mistake. He disappeared into the command center, closing the door. Eliza could see him through the window, making more calls, his body language getting progressively more aggressive. Whatever he was planning, it wasn't going to be subtle. Sarah appeared a few hours later, unharmed but shaken. I've never seen anything like that, she said, accepting the tea Eliza poured. They came in like a military unit. If we hadn't had the security measures we did, they would have gotten through. Did they say anything? Any of them? One of them yelled for Eliza Rowan to come out peacefully, said they'd been sent to bring you and the baby home safely. Sarah's mouth twisted, as if attacking a secured facility with automatic weapons was bringing someone home safely. When Victor finally emerged from the command center, it was past midnight. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past few hours. He sank onto the couch beside Eliza, scrubbing his hands over his face. I found the leak, he said, one of the contractors who worked on the safe house. Dylan Rowan paid him $50,000 for the location. Eliza's stomach dropped.
Dylan did this. Dylan facilitated it. The money came from the Rowan family accounts. They hired mercenaries to get you back. Victor's voice was flat. They're claiming they were trying to rescue Grace from a dangerous situation, that you've been brainwashed by me, that they had a right to protect their grandchild. That's insane. That's their story, and they're sticking to it. Victor turned to look at her. But here's the thing, they didn't account for how well protected you actually are. And now they've committed multiple felonies, federal crimes. The FBI is involved. The FBI. Kidnapping across state lines. Attempted murder of security personnel. The Rowans are about to learn that money and local influence don't mean much when federal prosecutors get involved. Something cold and satisfied crept into Victor's expression. They wanted a fight. They're getting one. Eliza should have felt vindicated, should have felt satisfaction that the Rowans were finally facing consequences. Instead, she just felt tired. Tired of running, tired of fighting, tired of living in fear. I want to see him, she said suddenly. Victor frowned. See who? Marcus. When they catch him, I want to see him. I want to look him in the face and tell him exactly what he took from me.
What he tried to make me. She met Victor's eyes. I'm done being afraid. I'm done letting him control my life, even when he's not in it. I want to face him.
Eliza, I need this. Her voice was firm. I need to look at him and know that he can't hurt me anymore. That he's just a man, just a person who made terrible choices. I need to take back the power he stole. Victor studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly.
Okay. When they find him, I'll make it happen. Marcus was found 2 days later, not by the police, by Victor's people. He'd been hiding in a hunting cabin owned by one of his cousins 40 miles outside Riverwood. When Victor's team surrounded the cabin, Marcus came out shooting. The firefight lasted less than 3 minutes. When it was over, Marcus was on the ground, bleeding from a shoulder wound, disarmed and defeated. Victor's people called the police before calling Victor, and by the time the authorities arrived, everything was clean and legal. A concerned citizen's tip, a lawful apprehension of a wanted fugitive. No questions asked. Victor came to the bunker to tell Eliza personally. He's alive, in custody, under guard at County Medical while they stabilize him. Then he's going to federal holding to await trial. I want to see him. I know. Victor hesitated. Are you sure? You don't owe him closure. You don't owe him anything.
I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing it for me. Victor arranged it for the following day.
Marcus was being transferred from the hospital to the federal facility, and there was a 30-minute window where they could request a supervised meeting. Maya came along, recording everything for the legal record. Webb and Karos provided security. Victor stood outside the room, visible through the window, a silent reminder that Eliza wasn't alone. Marcus sat in a wheelchair, his shoulder bandaged, handcuffed to the armrests. He looked smaller than Eliza remembered, diminished. When he saw her, something ugly twisted across his face. "Come to gloat?" he asked. Eliza stayed near the door, keeping distance between them.
No, I came to tell you something. I don't want to hear it. I don't care what you want. Her voice was steady. For 5 years, I made my world small enough to fit around your anger. I learned to read your moods, to predict your violence, to make myself invisible so you'd hurt me less. She took a breath. I thought that was survival. Thought that was what I had to do to stay alive. You're being dramatic. You locked me in a shed while I was 8 months pregnant. The words came out cold and clear. You starved me, beat me, controlled every aspect of my life. You made me believe I was worthless, that I deserved it, that nobody would ever want me. Eliza's hands clenched at her sides. And you know what the worst part was? I believed you. I actually believed that I'd brought it on myself. Marcus's face went red. You did. You never listened, never did what you were supposed to. There it is. Eliza almost smiled. That's the Marcus I know. Can't even pretend to feel remorse. Can't even fake being sorry. She stepped closer, just outside his reach. But here's what I want you to know. You failed. You tried to break me completely, and you failed. I'm still here, I'm still standing. And our daughter, the one you never got to meet, she's beautiful and healthy, and she's never going to know your voice. She's my daughter too. I have rights. You killed a man escaping custody. You hired people to attack a safe house. You've got enough federal charges that you're never seeing daylight again. Eliza's voice didn't waver. You have no rights. You have nothing. And Grace is going to grow up knowing that her father was a monster who couldn't love anyone but himself. Marcus lunged forward, or tried to. The handcuffs held him in place, and a guard immediately stepped forward. But Eliza didn't flinch, didn't step back. She just looked at him, this man who'd terrorized her for years, and felt nothing but pity. I'm not afraid of you anymore, she said quietly. You're just a sad, broken person who tried to make me as miserable as you were, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life being happy in spite of you. She turned and walked out without looking back. Victor was waiting in the hallway. He searched her face, clearly looking for signs of damage, but Eliza just felt lighter, like she'd set down something heavy she'd been carrying for years. I'm okay, she said. Actually, I think I'm better than okay. He smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. Ready to go home? Yeah. Eliza took his offered hand. Let's go home. Home turned out to be a different apartment in Casper, this one with better security and a view of the mountains. Victor had arranged everything while Eliza was confronting Marcus. New furniture, new supplies, a fresh start without the taint of the attack hanging over it. I can't keep letting you do this, Eliza said as she walked through the space, Grace asleep in her carrier. Pay for everything. Arrange my whole life. Then don't let me. Victor set the diaper bag on the kitchen counter.
Tell me to stop. Eliza opened her mouth to do exactly that, then closed it. Because the truth was, she wasn't ready to be completely on her own yet. Wasn't ready to face the world without Victor's resources backing her up. And maybe that was okay. Maybe accepting help didn't make her weak. I need to get a job, she said instead. Something I can do from home while Grace is little. Maya said the court would look more favorably on me if I could show independent income. What do you want to do? The question caught her off guard. Nobody had asked her what she wanted in years. I don't know. I used to sew. Made clothes for myself and my grandmother. I was pretty good at it. Then do that. It's not that simple. I'd need a machine, materials, clients, so get them. Victor pulled out his phone, already typing. My assistant knows people in the fashion industry. She can help you figure out what you need to get started. Victor, this isn't charity. It's an investment. He looked up from his phone. You're good at something. I'm helping you turn that into a business. Eventually, you'll pay me back if you want to. Or you won't. Either way, you'll have something that's yours. Eliza wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this was too much, too fast, too generous. But standing in this new apartment with Grace sleeping peacefully and Victor looking at her like she was capable of anything, she found herself saying, okay, let's try. The sewing machine arrived 2 days later. Industrial grade, the kind that cost more than Eliza had made in a year working at the diner. Victor's assistant, a woman named Patricia, who dressed like she stepped out of a fashion magazine, came with it, along with fabric samples and business cards for wholesale suppliers. Mr. Hale said you used to sew, Patricia said, setting up the machine on the dining table. What kind of things did you make? Dresses mostly, simple patterns, nothing fancy. Patricia pulled out her tablet showing Eliza images of clothing. The market for custom children's clothing is actually really strong right now. Parents want unique pieces for their kids. If you can do quality work with quick turnaround, you could build a solid client base. They spent the afternoon going over business basics, how to price materials and labor, how to market on social media, how to handle orders and shipping. Patricia made it all sound achievable, like Eliza could actually do this. After Patricia left, Eliza sat at the sewing machine, running her fingers over the smooth metal. She hadn't sewn anything in 6 years. Marcus had thrown out her grandmother's old singer during one of his rages, said she was wasting time on hobbies when she should have been taking care of the house. She pulled out one of the fabric samples, soft yellow cotton printed with tiny white flowers. Grace was sleeping in her bassinet nearby. Eliza measured, cut, and started sewing before she could overthink it. The muscle memory came back faster than she expected. The rhythm of the machine, the satisfaction of watching fabric transform into something useful. 2 hours later, she had a simple baby dress with a Peter Pan collar and buttons down the back. She held it up, checking the seams. Not perfect, but good. Better than good. She'd made something with her own hands, and it was hers. Victor stopped by that evening with dinner, Thai food from a place downtown. He saw the dress laid out on the table and picked it up, examining it carefully. You made this? Yeah. Eliza felt suddenly self-conscious. It's just a practice piece, nothing special. It's really good. Victor set it down carefully. How does it feel to be sewing again? Like remembering how to breathe. The words came out before she could censor them. I didn't realize how much I missed it until I started. They ate on the couch, containers spread across the coffee table, some cooking show playing on low volume. Grace woke up hungry halfway through, and Eliza fed her while Victor cleaned up the leftovers. It felt domestic in a way that should have scared Eliza, but instead felt comfortable. The Rowans are being indicted, Victor said, settling back on the couch. Dylan, Marcus's father, 2 uncles. Federal prosecutors are going after everyone involved in funding the attack. Will they actually go to prison? Probably. The evidence is solid, and the FBI doesn't like people hiring mercenaries to attack American citizens on American soil. He paused. Maya said it'll help your custody case, show a pattern of the family using violence and intimidation. Eliza adjusted Grace in her arms, looking down at her daughter's face. I don't want her to grow up knowing all this. The violence, the fear. I want better for her. Then we'll make sure she gets better. Victor's voice was quiet, whatever that looks like. Over the next few weeks, Eliza threw herself into building her sewing business. She made sample pieces and photographed them, created social media accounts with Patricia's help, posted her first listings on a handmade goods website. The response was slow at first. One order, then another, then a burst of 3 in one day. Each sale felt like a victory, proof that she could do this, that she was more than just Marcus's victim. Maya kept her updated on the legal proceedings. Marcus had been formally charged with murder, attempted kidnapping, and a list of other crimes that meant he'd never see freedom again. His trial was scheduled for September. The Rowans' trial would come later, but preliminary hearings suggested they were going to take plea deals rather than risk going to trial. It's almost over, Maya said during one of their phone calls. Once Marcus is convicted, we can finalize your divorce, get permanent custody established, and close this chapter. But Eliza was already thinking about the next chapter, the one where she wasn't defined by what had been done to her. She started going to therapy. A woman named Dr. Chen, no relation to the hospital doctor, who specialized in domestic violence survivors. The first few sessions were brutal, forcing Eliza to confront things she'd buried deep. But slowly, painfully, she started to untangle the knots Marcus had tied in her head. You keep talking about what you should have done differently, Dr. Chen said during their 4th session. What you should have seen, how you should have left sooner. But trauma doesn't work that way. You survived. That's what matters. But I let him hurt me for so long. You didn't let him do anything. He chose to hurt you. You chose to survive. Dr. Chen leaned forward. There's a difference. And until you understand that difference, you're going to keep carrying his guilt along with your own pain. The words stuck with Eliza. She thought about them while sewing, while feeding Grace, while lying awake at night listening to the sounds of the apartment. Victor noticed the shift. You seem different, he said one evening. They were in the small park near the apartment, Grace in her stroller, late spring sunshine warm on their faces. I'm trying to be different, trying to figure out who I am when I'm not just reacting to Marcus. Eliza watched a group of kids playing on the swings. It's harder than I thought. I don't know who I am without the fear. You're a mother, a businesswoman, someone who survived something terrible and came out the other side. Victor's hand found hers, their fingers lacing together. You're also someone I care about very much. Eliza looked at him. They'd been dancing around this for months, the careful touches, the long conversations, the way Victor showed up for her without asking for anything in return. She'd been too scared to name it, too worried that caring about someone meant giving them power to hurt her. But Victor had never used his power to hurt her, had only ever used it to protect. I care about you too, she said. But I'm still figuring out what that means, what I'm ready for. I know, and I'm not going anywhere. He squeezed her hand gently. Take all the time you need. Marcus's trial started in September, 5 months after his capture. Eliza didn't attend. Maya advised against it, said it would be too traumatic. But she read the news coverage, watched as the prosecution laid out the timeline of violence, the guard Marcus had killed, the escape, the attack on the safe house. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge called Marcus a danger to society, said his complete lack of remorse demonstrated he'd never be rehabilitated. Maya called Eliza with the news. It's done. He's never getting out. Eliza sat on the couch with Grace, now 6 months old and trying to roll over, and tried to feel something. Relief, satisfaction, closure. But mostly she just felt tired. What happens now, she asked. Now we finalize your divorce and get permanent custody. The Rowans can petition for visitation rights, but given their criminal charges, no judge is going to grant them. Maya's voice softened. You're free, Eliza. Really, truly free. The divorce was finalized in October. Eliza signed papers in Maya's office, officially ending her marriage to Marcus Rowan. She kept her married name for legal purposes. It was on Grace's birth certificate, but Maya helped her file paperwork to change it to her grandmother's maiden name. Hayes. Eliza Hayes again, like the girl who'd stopped in a thunderstorm to help strangers. She celebrated by taking Grace to the park and sewing a new dress. Small victories, normal moments, the kind of life she'd thought was impossible a year ago. Victor came over that evening with champagne and takeout. To new beginnings, he said, raising his glass. To surviving, Eliza countered. To both. They drank on the couch while Grace played on her activity mat, grabbing at dangling toys. The apartment was cluttered with fabric and sewing supplies and baby things. It looked lived in, loved, real. I've been thinking, Eliza said, about what comes next. Victor set down his glass. And? I want to open a shop, not just online sales, a real place where people can come in, see the fabrics, talk about custom orders. She'd been thinking about this for weeks, sketching layouts in a notebook, dreaming bigger than she'd let herself dream in years. Somewhere women can feel safe, can bring their kids and know they're welcome. Sounds perfect. Where? Here in Casper, I think. I know the city now, have some clients here, and it's far enough from Riverwood that I don't have to worry about running into Rowans. Eliza looked at Victor. But I need to do this myself. No more loans, no more you fixing everything. I need to build this on my own. Something complicated crossed Victor's face. Pride, maybe, and something else. Sadness, like he was losing something. Okay, he said finally, but if you need advice or connections or just someone to watch Grace while you meet with landlords, I'm here. I know, and I'm grateful. Eliza reached for his hand. But I need to prove to myself that I can do this, that I'm not just another person you saved. You were never just another person. Victor's thumb brushed across her knuckles. But I understand. Finding a storefront took 2 months. Eliza walked every commercial street in Casper looking for the right space. Too expensive, too small, wrong neighborhood. She was about to give up when she found it, a corner unit in a building near downtown. Large windows, good light, affordable rent with room to grow. The landlord was a woman in her 60s who'd run a bakery in the same building for 30 years. She looked at Eliza's business plan, looked at Grace in her carrier and said, I like you. First month is half rent while you get set up. Eliza wanted to hug her. Instead, she signed the lease and cried in her car for 10 minutes. Setting up the shop took everything she had. Her savings from online sales went into inventory and equipment. Victor helped with things she couldn't do alone, moving the industrial sewing machines, installing shelves, fixing a leak in the bathroom. But the vision was all Eliza's. Fabrics organized by color and weight, a comfortable area where clients could sit with their children, a changing table in the bathroom, a sign above the door that read, Haven Handmade. Haven? Victor asked when he saw it. Because everyone deserves a safe place, Eliza said, even if it's just while they're shopping for baby clothes. The shop opened on a cold morning in late January, exactly 1 year after Eliza had been locked in the shed. She'd chosen the date deliberately, reclaiming it, turning the worst night of her life into the beginning of something new. The first customer was a young woman who looked exhausted and overwhelmed, a newborn strapped to her chest. She browsed quietly, running her hands over the soft fabrics, and when she brought a blanket to the counter, her hands were shaking. My partner left, she said quietly. 3 weeks ago. Said he couldn't handle being a father. She laughed, but it was broken. I don't know what I'm doing, don't know how to do this alone. Eliza wrapped the blanket carefully, then added a small stuffed rabbit from the display. On the house, for being my first customer. I can't. You can, and you're not alone. Eliza met the woman's eyes. I've been where you are. It gets better. I promise. The woman left crying, clutching the bag like it was precious. And Eliza knew she'd built the right thing. Business was slow at first, but word spread. Young mothers, single parents, women who needed somewhere that felt safe. They came for the clothes and stayed for the community that grew around the shop. Eliza hired her first employee in March, a woman named Jennifer, who'd left an abusive relationship and needed flexible hours around her daughter's school schedule. Then another woman. Then a teenager who needed job experience. Haven Handmade became more than a shop. It became a refuge. Victor watched it all with quiet pride. He still came by the apartment most evenings, bringing dinner, playing with Grace, being present without being intrusive. Their relationship had shifted into something Eliza couldn't quite define. More than friends, not quite lovers. Something in between that felt right for where they both were. "I'm not ready yet," she told him one night when the tension between them had gotten thick enough to cut. "For anything physical, anything—" "I know." Victor had kissed her forehead, gentle and chaste. "I'll wait. However long it takes." But by summer, Eliza was starting to feel ready. Not for everything, not all at once, but for more, for letting Victor in completely. They were at his place, a penthouse apartment Eliza had visited only a handful of times, when it finally happened. Grace was with Jennifer, giving Eliza a rare evening off. They'd had dinner on the balcony, watched the sunset turn the mountains orange and purple, and somewhere between dessert and coffee, Eliza had leaned over and kissed him. Victor responded immediately, his hand cupping her face, deepening the kiss. When they pulled apart, Eliza was breathing hard, her heart racing. "Are you sure?" Victor asked. "No, but I want to try." They went slow. Victor let Eliza set the pace, never pushing, never demanding. And when they finally made love, it was nothing like what Eliza had experienced with Marcus. Victor was patient, gentle, asked what she wanted, stopped when she needed to stop. Made her feel like her body was something precious instead of something to be used. Afterward, lying in his bed with the city lights glowing through the windows, Eliza felt something break open in her chest. Not pain, not fear. Something warmer. "I love you," she said quietly. Victor's arm tightened around her. "I love you too. Have for a while now." "Since when?" "Honestly? Probably since you told Marcus you weren't afraid of him anymore. You were so strong, so sure." He pressed a kiss to her hair. "I looked at you and thought, this is the person I want to spend my life with." Eliza turned to face him, searching his expression in the dim light. "That's terrifying." "I know. What if I'm not ready? What if I need more time to figure out who I am without Marcus defining me?" "Then we take more time." Victor's hand traced patterns on her shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere, Eliza. I waited 9 years to find you. I can wait however long you need." They stayed together that night, and the night after, and gradually it became natural for Victor to be part of Eliza's daily life. Not as a savior or a protector, but as a partner. Someone who showed up because he wanted to, not because he owed her anything. Grace's first birthday came in October. Eliza threw a party at the shop, small, just a few friends and employees and their kids. Victor was there, helping with decorations, taking pictures, looking at Grace like she was the most important person in the room. Maya came too, bringing a ridiculously large teddy bear. "You've come a long way," she said, watching Grace demolish a cupcake. "A year ago, you were in a hospital bed. Now look at you." Eliza looked around the shop, at the thriving business she'd built, at the women who'd found community here, at Grace, happy and healthy and completely unaware of how close she'd come to never existing. "Yeah," she said, "I guess I have." The Rowans tried one last play in November. Marcus's mother filed for grandparents' rights, claiming Grace deserved to know her family. Maya shut it down in one hearing, presenting evidence of the family's criminal charges and their role in funding the attack. The judge denied the petition and told the Rowans that any further attempts to contact Eliza or Grace would result in harassment charges. That night, Eliza burned the last box of things she'd kept from her marriage. Photographs, the marriage certificate, a sweater Marcus had given her for Christmas one year. She watched it all turn to ash in Victor's fireplace while he held Grace and told her stories about her mother's bravery. "Is it wrong that I'm glad?" Eliza asked, watching the flames. "That I'm happy Marcus is locked away? That his family lost everything?" "No." Victor shifted Grace to his other arm. "They made their choices. They're living with the consequences. I used to think I was responsible for keeping him happy, for making sure he didn't get angry." Eliza poked at the ashes with a fireplace tool. "Took me a long time to understand that his anger was his, not mine. You understand it now. That's what matters." By the time Grace turned 18 months old, Haven Handmade had expanded into the space next door. Eliza hired 4 employees and started offering sewing classes for women who wanted to learn. The classes filled up immediately, women seeking creative outlets, job skills, or just community. One of the students was a woman named Maria, who'd recently left her husband. She was quiet, jumpy, always checking her phone like she was expecting bad news. Eliza recognized the signs immediately. After class one day, she pulled Maria aside. "Are you safe? At home?" Maria's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know. He keeps texting, saying he'll change, that I'm overreacting." "Do you have somewhere to go if you need to leave quickly?" "No, my family's in Texas. All my friends are his friends." Eliza wrote down Maya's number and Victor's security company. "These people can help. Housing, legal advice, protection if you need it. No questions asked." Maria took the paper with shaking hands. "Why are you helping me?" "Because someone helped me when I needed it. Now I'm passing it forward." Maria called Maya 2 days later. Within a week, she had a restraining order and an apartment. Within a month, she had full custody of her kids and a job at Haven Handmade. "You're doing something important here," Victor said, watching Maria carefully fold fabric while her daughter played nearby. "It's more than a business." "I know." Liza felt a fierce satisfaction seeing it. "I'm building what I needed when I was trapped. A place where women can be themselves, can learn skills, can feel safe enough to imagine a different life." By Grace's second birthday, Eliza had saved enough to buy the building that housed Haven Handmade. The landlord sold it to her below market value, said she was glad to see it going to someone who'd use it well. Victor helped with the legal paperwork, but insisted on staying out of the financial side. "This is yours," he said firmly. "Your accomplishment, your success." The purchase made Eliza a business owner and a property owner, made her someone with assets and stability, made her the kind of person the courts couldn't question when it came to providing for Grace. Not that anyone was questioning anymore. Marcus was serving his life sentence in a maximum security facility 800 miles away. The Rowans had been convicted and scattered, Dylan to federal prison, the others to various facilities around the state. Their influence in Riverwood was gone, their reputation destroyed. Eliza almost felt sorry for them. Almost. She'd been with Victor for over a year when he asked her to move in with him. They were at the park watching Grace play, early fall sunshine warm on their faces. "I know you love your apartment," he said, but my place is bigger, better schools in the neighborhood, and I'd like to wake up with you every morning instead of just the nights you stay over." Eliza considered it. She'd fought hard for independence, for the ability to stand on her own. Moving in with Victor felt like giving that up, but it also felt like choosing partnership, like letting someone in because she wanted to, not because she needed to. "Okay," she said, "but I'm paying half the mortgage." Victor laughed. "I own it outright. How about you pay utilities instead?" "Deal." They moved in together that October. Grace got her own room with a view of the mountains. Eliza got a dedicated sewing space with natural light and room for all her equipment. And Victor got the family he'd been waiting for. It wasn't perfect. Eliza still had nightmares sometimes, still flinched at sudden movements, still struggled with trusting that good things could last. Dr. Chen said that was normal, that trauma didn't just disappear because your life got better, but it got easier. The nightmares came less frequently. The flinching faded. And slowly, carefully, Eliza let herself believe that maybe she deserved happiness. Victor proposed on a random Tuesday in December. No grand gestures, no elaborate planning, just the two of them and Grace making dinner in the kitchen when he pulled out a ring and said, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you, both of you, if you'll have me." Eliza looked at the ring, simple, elegant, nothing like the cheap band Marcus had given her, and felt her throat close up. "I'm still broken sometimes," she warned. "Still figuring things out." "So am I." Victor's gray eyes held hers. "But we can be broken together, if you want." Grace chose that moment to dump an entire bowl of pasta on the floor, breaking the tension. They both laughed, and Eliza said yes while cleaning up noodles, and it was perfect precisely because it wasn't perfect. They got married in the spring at the courthouse with Maya and a handful of employees as witnesses. Grace wore a dress Eliza had made specifically for the occasion, white with yellow flowers, the same fabric as the first dress she'd sewn in the new apartment. Victor wore a dark suit and looked at Eliza like she was the only person in the world. The ceremony took 10 minutes. The celebration lasted all day, lunch at their favorite restaurant, an afternoon at the park, evening with friends at Haven Handmade. Simple, joyful, exactly what Eliza wanted. That night, lying in bed with her new husband while Grace slept in the next room, Eliza thought about the girl who'd pulled two strangers from a wrecked car 9 years ago. That girl had been kind without knowing the cost, had helped without expecting anything in return. And somehow, impossibly, that kindness had led here, to safety, to love, to a life worth living.
"Thank you," she said quietly. Victor stirred beside her. "For what?" "For looking for me. For not giving up. For believing I was worth saving even when I didn't believe it myself." "You saved yourself," Victor said. "I just made sure you had the space to do it." Maybe that was true. Maybe Eliza had been saving herself all along, one small choice at a time, choosing to survive in the shed, choosing to keep Grace safe, choosing to face Marcus, choosing to build something new instead of staying buried in the past. Haven Handmade thrived. 3 years after opening, Eliza had 2 locations and was training women to open franchises in other cities. Each shop followed the same model: quality handmade goods, fair wages, and a safe space for women who needed it. Employment programs for domestic violence survivors, free childcare during business hours, community support that went beyond just selling clothes. Victor's company partnered with Haven to provide security consultations and safety planning for employees in dangerous situations. He never charged for the service, said it was his way of contributing to what Eliza had built. Grace grew into a bright, curious child who loved her mother's sewing shop and her father's stories. She didn't remember the shed or the hospital or any of the fear. She just knew she was loved fiercely by 2 parents and an extended family of women who'd found refuge in her mother's kindness. On Grace's 5th birthday, Eliza found herself standing in the original Haven Handmade location, watching her daughter show the new employees how to thread a needle. Victor was there too, leaning against the counter with that slight smile he got when he watched Grace do anything. "You did good," he said quietly. "We did good," Eliza corrected, because that's what it was. Not her success or his protection, but their partnership, built on honesty and trust, and the willingness to show up for each other, broken pieces and all. Marcus had tried to make Eliza disappear, had tried to erase everything that made her who she was. But standing in her thriving business, surrounded by the community she'd built, watching her daughter laugh with women who'd found safety here, Eliza had never been more visible. She'd survived. And more than that, she'd built something worth surviving for. The girl who'd stopped in a thunderstorm to help strangers had grown into a woman who created shelter for others, who understood that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was keep breathing, keep trying, keep showing up even when everything in you screamed to run. And that woman, scarred but not broken, afraid but not defeated, was exactly who Eliza had always been meant to become.